Hello and welcome to episode 63 of my podcast all about knitting and crochet and my yarn shop here in Wiesbaden, Germany. I'm Kiko and today is August 31st, 2020. Today I'm wearing something brand new and something a bit older. So the brand new thing is my sleeves that I showed you as a finished object last week and which has now been washed and blocked. And I especially blocked the back bit to make it longer, and I'm really happy with how it sits and how it fits now. The sleeve length is exactly as I wanted it, and I think the back looks a lot better now after it's been washed and blocked, and I'm really happy with it. And the top tunic, dress, whatever I'm wearing underneath was knit by my sister. It's not knit by myself. I'll just show you the whole thing. It's fairly long. And it uses 3 different colors. It's this blue with the turquoise, then more blue colors and the blue gray up here. And my sister knit this as part of a competition that was put out by Opal Yarn Company several years ago. I also took part in that. I showed the cape that I knit in my first unboxing video I did. If you look on my German channel, you can find it, but I'll try and show it in a regular episode someday so that you can see that too. Anyway, so my sister chose these different yarns for the blue color because her the inspiration for this thing was to be water, and that's why she used this drop stitch pattern that looks wave-like, and then this pattern also reminds her of waves. And then if you look really closely, she doesn't just change from one pattern to the other, but the change happens gradually so that even that looks a bit like a wave. And then the third pattern that she uses is this very classic wave pattern that you find again and again. But I think here the change was straight. But anyway, I think it's a very, very nice top. I think the motif, the water idea comes through very clearly, but she still didn't win a prize. But she didn't mind. But when it came back to her, she realized that she doesn't wear it. She wasn't too happy with the fit, and she doesn't wear blue as much as I do. So she offered it to me and she said I could have it. And at first I thought it would be too tight, but then I just washed it and blocked it to make it wider. It came out shorter because of that, but I don't mind about that as I'm fairly short myself. And I think the way it fits now is okay. I can wear it. So that's what I'm wearing today. On to my finished objects. I have only one finished object today, but I'm very happy with it. And that's my Snowflake pullover. I had almost finished it last week. I only needed to finish the ribbing, and I've done that. I did the same number of rows as on the sleeves, so those ribbings would kind of go together. I have not yet washed it and blocked it. I have woven in all the ends, so it's nice and tidy. Well, as tidy as you can. I think I forgot to snip that, but I did weave it in. And I'm very, very happy. The second blue ball of yarn that I had was enough to finish the ribbing. I have just a few grams left of that ball. And it's when I tried it on, you can see pictures on Ravelry. It seems a bit wide on the back underneath the pattern. I'm not quite sure why that is. I've never had that problem before. And I kind of hope that it will vanish once it's washed. I'm not really going to block it because I'm really happy with the fit otherwise. So I'll just wash it and lay it flat to dry. But maybe things will even out a bit so that it won't be quite that wide on my back. But I'll let you know as soon as the weather is right that I can wear it. I'll wear it on one of my videos and then you can see how it fits me. So that was my finished object for today. Then on to works in progress. As there were only really 4 days between my last video and today, there's a lot of projects that I did not work on. So I thought I'll just quickly mention them. I did not work on the cat blanket, not on the memory blanket, not on the green granny square blanket, and I did not work on the white and grey crochet top that I was undoing again. I did the undoing, so I ripped out the straps on the shoulders and the last row of the second square, so I have two separate pieces again, but I did not get around to crocheting further, so I only sort of worked backwards, not forwards. I also did not crochet on the Carnaby crochet along, even though the new magazine was published, so I can go on with that, but just didn't get around to doing that. And I did not crochet on my trousers. So there's lots of things that I did not work on, but now I'll show you what I did work on. As usual, I start with my socks and the wrist warmers. I'll start with the wrist warmers because they're almost done. I had hoped to finish them, but it's just this little, as I said, I do them exactly the same or as the same as possible, but I'm just knitting through one of the color repeats and I'm almost done. So I think I finished the black and white bit here. So all I need to do is this gray bit here, and then as soon as this reddish brown color comes again, I'll cast off. So it's not a lot to do. This will definitely be done by next week. Yeah, but that's that. Then I knit on the Hermione's Everyday Socks. I'm knitting 2 pairs of Hermione's Everyday Socks. This is her socks and these are his socks. So it's for a couple that I give socks to every Christmas. And hers, I think, is done. I will have to measure it once more, just to be sure. But I think it's long enough now to start the toe. So that sock should be done by next week, and I hope I'll have started the second one, because I like to start the second one as soon as I finish the first one. And with his first sock, I finished the heel. So the heel is done. I'm still on the gusset decreases. Only just started these. Yep, but I've finished the heel. So these are all the socks I'm knitting on. As I'm going to finish the wrist warmers soon, I will probably start another pair of socks or wrist warmers, or both, until next week. I did work on the poncho that I'm knitting for the theatre in the very thick yarn, but as I had planned to do, I washed the bit that I've knit so far to see how it grows or not grows through washing, and it wasn't dry yet. I was afraid it wouldn't be dry because of the big thick cotton yarn. It'll probably take quite some time to dry, but if I hadn't done it yesterday, I wouldn't have had time and space to do that this week, so it needed to be done. Sorry, I can't show it today. I only added a little bit of knitting before I washed it, but as soon as it's washed, I can figure out how long I'm going to make the back, and then start the cast off or put some stitches on a piece of thread or something, and do the shoulders. So yeah, you'll see next week how far I get with that. But what I can show you, I did work on the promise dress that I am test crocheting, and I'll show you my neat little piles of squares, and I sorted them according to the last round of crochet. So these are all, the last round of all these is this darker orange, and this is the darker yellow, this is the lighter yellow, and so for every color I have 4, 6, 8, 9 squares, As I have 7 colors, that's 63 squares that I finished. And in every pile, there are 3 squares in one color. And there are 2 squares that have 2 colors. And 4 squares with 3 colors. And so far, except for the 1 color squares, I haven't repeated a square. So my plan is that all the squares that have 2 or 3 colors will be different from each other. I'm not going to repeat any squares. So some may have the same colors so there may be 2 squares that have the same colors, but then they will be in a different place. Yeah, so that's the plan. And I'm also planning that the front and the back are made up of 9 rows of squares. And I'm planning to have the lower 3 rows with 1 color squares, and then the middle 3 rows with 2 color squares, and the top bit, the one that next to my face and that I think you look at most, will have the 3 color squares. And I'm planning on combining the squares or knitting the last round of each square with black, so that's sort of the main color or the background color that holds everything together. And I'm hoping to start attaching squares to each other this week, so I can learn how to do that. There's a video that she links to in the pattern that I want to have a look at, and I want to try that technique out. And so I hope to continue crocheting squares, but also start assembling the different panels. So you're supposed to do a front panel, a back panel, and both the sleeves that you crochet together, and then the 4 panels are being sewn together. That's the plan. And yeah, so I hope to be working parallel with crocheting squares and attaching squares. Hope to be able to show you some of that next week. So that's the promised dress, crochet dress. Then I almost finished the brioche square shrug, blanket, shawl kind of thing. So I decided that 110 stitches for every side was big enough. I know it's not huge, it won't be as big as the first square that I knit with the lace pattern, but because of the brioche it's a lot heavier as well, so I thought maybe it's just big enough. I just was so curious to see what it will look like once it's cast off that I just had to do it. And what I did is I did an I-cord bind off, but usually what you did when you do an I-cord is that you, with every row of I-cord that you knit, you cast off 1 stitch of whatever you have, so you will knit the last 2 stitches together. But because this is brioche and I really wanted to make sure that the edge is as flexible as the rest, what I'm doing is I'm knitting 1 round of I-cord just by itself, and then 1 round where I knit the last 2 stitches together, where I bind off 1 stitch from my shawl or from my square. So for every stitch that I have to do 2 rounds of I-cord. And I had 440 stitches, so I'm doing 880 rounds of I-cord, and I did not quite finish that. I bound off 3 sides of the square. 1, 2, 3. And the 4th side is still on the needle. But you can get an idea of how big this is going to be. I'll just step back a bit, and you can also see how this line of increases spirals out. And okay, I'll turn it around to where the whole edge has been bound off. And if I let it do what it wants, it will spiral out like this, and you get this kind of thing over here. And yeah, I might block it so it lies square. But what I do not want to do is block it aggressively, because then it will sort of lose its fluffiness. Where's my sleeves gone? So the first, this was the first brioche square that I started knitting, but then because of the spirally thing, I started another one where I did the increases so that the square was a perfect square. And when I finished that, I blocked it, not very aggressively, but I did block it, and it did grow nicely, but it sort of lost its scrumptiness, because if you pull it too wide, it'll just go flat, and I don't want this to happen for this. So I will wash it once it's bound off, but I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do. And I'll let it dry lying flat, so it won't stretch out in any direction. And then I will decide whether I'll sew it together and wear it as a shrug, or I'll leave it the way it is and wear it as some kind of shawl. It's probably too small for that. Or maybe I'll just leave it the way it is and decide and that it's a baby blanket. So these are the options that I have, but I won't decide until it's actually washed and dried, and I've tried things out. But it is getting there. This should be done by next week as well. So yeah, that's that. So by next week I should know what it's going to be when it's done. Okay, then what else did I do? I crocheted something. I did another like a gauge swatch before I went on holiday, and I forgot to tell you about it last week because I'd done it before the holidays. But I thought I'll show you today, as I don't have that many projects today. And it's another gauge swatch for one of the blankets in this beautiful book, Rainbow Crochet Blankets. I think the last video before my holiday, or the one before, I showed you another gauge swatch that I'd done. And now I did one for the blanket called Not Garden. And that's what the blanket looks like. And it uses 6 different colors. And then she has these variations that you can use. So this is what the schematic looks like for the original blanket, and then you can have these other colors. And I was kind of going for these colors, but because the schematic doesn't show all 6 colors, it was a bit difficult to decide which color to put where. It's a bit difficult to explain, but I picked colors and I decided which color is which. And then I did, like, if you look at the schematic, you have those squares with the yellow dot in the middle, and then you have these squares where the blue bit is either in the middle, on the side, or in the corner, and then you have these purple squares. And I did one of those each. And what my gauge swatch looks like is this. And I was quite surprised. It's not quite what I had expected, but it sort of helped me to see how much of each color you see. For example, the purple squares in the schematic, they look completely purple. So I hadn't realized that the light green comes around, but I quite like it. And this is the bit that sits on this side in the middle. And if I had done this square, the light green bit would have been in the corner. And then with this square, it would have been here. And this is how the whole blanket is sort of made up. I had another issue with this gauge swatch because the number of stitches that I finish off this square is not the same as this one. Or it was different here. I'm not quite sure which it was, but so I found it a bit hard to crochet things together. And also in the book, she recommends that you use the yarn that you use to finish the square to sew it to the next piece, but this square finishes off with the lilac up here. So if I want to sew it here, well, you have to organize your yarn ends with this blanket if you were to do the whole blanket. But this is another thing that a gauge swatch is good for, that you realize where you have to leave your yarn hanging so that you can use it for sewing this or that. So I think, yeah, as you can see, I use the dark green to sew these squares together, but I'm not really happy with how it looks because the dark green shows. I don't think it's a big problem, but I'm just not really happy with what it looks like. So maybe I should have used this light lilac color to sew it, but then I probably wouldn't have enough yarn just from finishing this square to do all 4 sides. I don't know, but the thing itself looks really interesting. This gauge swatch would help me to pick the colors if I were to do the whole blanket. So yeah, I don't regret making it at all, because with every new pattern that I try out, I learn new things and I learn things about the pattern. And I really like the blanket. So maybe someday I would crochet it, maybe with this yarn, maybe with these colors, maybe with different colors. I don't know. But I really enjoyed doing it, and I'm looking forward to doing the next gauge swatch from this book. And because I'm really crazy about crochet blankets at the moment, I started another crochet blanket. And that is not just for fun, but it has a reason, because this is for the cousin of the girl who's getting the cat blanket. And the idea behind these crochet blankets were that I wanted to crochet a blanket for all my cousin's kids when they start school. So when the first kid started school, she got a blanket made of flowers. I crocheted more than 200 flowers and crocheted them together. Then for the second girl, I did a blanket with owls, and I was only a year late giving that to her. And then the cat blanket is the next one, and that girl has been waiting for her blanket for 2 years. So I feel quite ashamed of myself, but I am working on it now. And the little boy who started school this summer, he has already asked his mum whether he might get a school blanket as well. And he's a big dinosaur fan. So I have been looking for patterns with dinosaurs for weeks and months, and I wasn't really happy with anything that I found. But then a friend of mine helped me, and she came up with a wonderful pattern that I really like. And as soon as I found it, I went and bought it on Ravelry, and I crocheted the first square for that blanket just to see how it comes out. And this is opal sock yarn DK weight. It's one of the rainforest colors. I'd already, even before I had the yarn, when I saw the announcement that this color would come, I decided that this was dinosaur colors. I don't know why I think these are dinosaur colors, but I do. And the blanket is made out of squares that look like this, and then squares that look like dinosaur hats. Yeah, and I'm really happy. The yarn I'm using is not as big as the one in the pattern, so my squares come out smaller, but I don't mind. They're quite big anyway. And so the next square that I'm going to crochet will be one of the dinosaur hats. If you want to see what they look like, I've linked to the pattern on my Ravelry page. You can look at that, or you can wait until I've crocheted the first Triceratops head, and you can see what they look like. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to doing that. I will have to make sure that I finish the cat blanket first because she's been waiting longer, but I also look forward to working on the dinosaurs. So that brings me to my last project for today, and that's the Gemini pullover that we're knitting as a knit along. And as I said last week, I want to do a tutorial video. I did do that. I did the first part of that video, so we haven't released it yet. And I started doing the raglan increases. So this is the part without pattern, and then left and right, these are the sleeves, and this is the other front or back with the pattern. And I did the raglan increases as they're described in the pattern. They're done every round. But as I say in the tutorial, I'm modifying the pattern so that the sleeve will have, I'm knitting the sleeve for the size extra small, but I'm knitting the front and back for the size medium because that's what I think will fit me. So I finished the increases where I increase for the sleeves and the front and backs, and now I will continue just knitting increases for the fronts and backs. And when I've done all the increases that I calculated I will try it on, see whether my calculations were correct, and see if I need a bit more length. Then I will knit a few rounds without increases, and once the yoke is done I will film the next bit of the tutorial and show how I separate the stitches for the sleeves from the front and back, so I can continue on the front and backs. And and then once I've filmed that tutorial, we can upload it and you can see it, but again it'll be just in German. So as you can see, I finished the first ball of yarn, so this is how far I got, and then I couldn't continue knitting because I forgot to bring the yarn to take it home. So this is something that I can do this week. Yeah, so that's all I knit and crocheted last week. I have quite a few plans for new things I want to do. On the other hand, I want to finish all the things I have going at the moment, so I'm a bit unsure what to do. I really want to do the skirt that goes with my Snowflake pullover. I have several baby things planned that I want to do because the babies are on their way, so they can't really wait, but I really have a lot of works in progress, so I will have to see how I prioritize things, and I'll let you know next week how I decided. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!